Hey guys, welcome to Watch with Poppy. Time to talk about this week's episode of Scandal. So there were definitely some interesting developments in this episode. Let's talk about Huck and B613 and Kim. So we remember when Huck gave Kim the B613 files, really to prove to her that all of the crazy spy talk he'd been telling her was actually the truth. Kim's decided that the world needs to know about B613. Someone needs to pay for what happened to Huck. So she ends up at the Attorney General's office with her files. And of course, David Rosen freaks out. Huck tries to convince her, this is not the right thing to do. You guys will not be safe. And the whole time I'm thinking the same thing. I get it, the principle of things. But at the same time, I'm thinking, you've got a young kid here. We might actually want to keep him alive. And a lot of this episode, we saw Huck, David, and Jake, with their heads together, trying to figure out what to do. Eventually, they convince Huck that he needs to lie. So the plan is for him to come into David's office with Kim to give his B613 testimony. But once he gets there, he's going to lie, right? Because obviously, him telling the truth is going to expose a lot of people. There were some fantastic moments in this episode. One of the best was that scene with Huck in David's office, right? Where you think, okay, he's going to lie. He's going to keep everyone safe. And then as he's sitting there and David is asking him questions, you see him having these flashbacks of his family. And David starts to ask him questions about different things. And then he asks him a question about the hole. And that really is kind of the turning point for Huck. And all of a sudden, it just all starts to spill out from him, And at first I was thinking come on, Huck, what are you doing? But then I realized that Kim is kind of right. Think about all that Huck suffered, all of the things he lost because of B613. And you know what? Somebody should pay for all of that, really. Somebody should get into some trouble. David is really moved as well by Huck's testimony. You guys, it was just when he started talking about measuring the hole and he knew exactly the measurements and how every day he kept himself in the same routine so that he could stop himself from going crazy. It was just such a well-acted scene and super intense. David is really kind of impacted as well by Huck's testimony, right? We get that he's going to move forward with this. We see him at the end of the episode tell Jake that look, I am going to move forward. Someone is going to pay. I'm going to go get the bad guys. I'll try as hard as I can to protect us, but somebody should answer for what happened. So yeah, that seems like an interesting little twist. I'm sure that the remnants of B613 are not just going to hang out and let that happen. So something tells me that there's going to be a few people who are not safe. So a large part of the episode dealt with Susan Ross getting confirmed as Fitz's new vice president. And it was really interesting to watch this whole process, right? So they hire Leo at first, right? Come on. They hire him to kind of help her get ready for the Senate hearings that she's going to have to deal with. She makes this little faux pas at the beginning, and he manages to help her kind of get back on her feet and kind of get back into the groove of things. But then, we all know that Leo is balls to the wall, basically. And that's not really the best approach for her. In the end, I thought it was so interesting, right? That Abby ends up bringing Olivia in. So let's stop for a second and talk about Olivia. In this episode, we really kind of see where Olivia is at after her ordeal. We see the effects of that in her everyday life. This woman is walking around her house with a coffee cup and a gun. She's definitely dealing with some post-traumatic stress. So Abby goes to her and convinces her to help with Susan because she tells Olivia, you could use something good right now. And it's so true. So Olivia does help. And it's kind of that whole idea, you guys, when you're having a rough time, it's sometimes work is that thing that you need so that it takes your mind off of what you're dealing with. I just love Susan, you guys. She's so real and just raw. That whole scene where she breaks into giggles and snorts while she's giving this speech to the press. I just thought it was so real and I loved that about her. I still think that Susan's going to be a big problem for Mellie. I think that as she is VP, she's only going to get better at what she does, and that when it comes time to run for president, Mellie's going to have a bit of an opponent on her hands. Before we talk about my favorite scene, which was that Olitz moment, let's talk about Rose. So Olivia's neighbor that lives across the hall, Lois, was killed by the people that took Olivia, right? So of course Olivia's not sharing that with the world. A couple of episodes ago, we saw this character Rose show up because she's looking for her friend Lois. And so Olivia finally kind of puts OPA on the task. Let's find this woman's body so that her friend can get some closure. I was definitely shocked by the little twist in that story when we learned that not only were they friends, but they were more than that, like that they'd been in love with each other since they were 16, and that one was definitely a shocker. In the end, they are able to find her body and kind of give this poor woman some closure. And there was that moment too where Olivia's standing there, and I really almost thought Olivia was going to tell her the truth, was going to tell her what really happened to Lois, but instead she gives her the like easy story of Lois having an aneurysm, feeling no pain. It was so sad, right? But you get why she did it, you know, why she kind of kept the truth to herself. Okay, so let's talk about Olitz and my favorite scene of this episode. So when Abby goes to enlist Olivia's help in getting Susan Ross confirmed, she tells her, like, you won't have to see him, meaning Fitz. In the end, she does have to see him, right? Because it turns out that Fitz is the problem. Congress doesn't want to confirm his VP because they're still mad at him for going to war in West Angola. So there's this scene, right, in the Oval Office. Olivia's there, Fitz is there, Cyrus and Abby, right? So Cyrus and Abby are trying to tell Fitz, like, look, Olivia thinks you need to go to Congress, you need to apologize. That's how we're gonna get Susan Ross confirmed. So remember when you were kids, right, and you were mad at one of your brothers or sisters, and then you would tell the other one, like, well, you tell her that I said such and such and such and such, even though she was sitting right there next to you, but you weren't talking to her. That was totally Olivia in this scene, right? She kind of gives Cyrus and Abby these instructions, and she goes into the Oval Office, but she literally almost stands in the doorway, like as far away from Fitz as she possibly can. We get that she's still angry at him, like I totally get that, but there was just this moment, you guys, where she just kind of chimes in, right? This whole time she tries to stay quiet and let Cyrus and Abby do all the talking, but she finally has enough of all of like Fitz's objections, and so she finally chimes in. And he just like walks from around his desk, and he's got this look in his face, like he's got that look in his face, right? And he just marches over to where she's standing and gets all up in her personal space. But these two, man, I mean, these two are why Scandal is Scandal, right? Because they have such fantastic chemistry. It was so great too, right? Because as he starts to talk to her, I mean, like his voice lowers. I mean, like he just takes on a whole different tone and everything, right? And you get that the words that they're going to share are going to be pretty intimate, right? They're really, really close. And then he lowers his voice to talk to her. And poor Cyrus and Abby, right, are standing there like trying to like be like, oh, I'm not looking. And I thought that was hilarious. But yeah, the chemistry, you guys, between the two of them is just so like freaking amazing. There was a moment where they just stood there, right? It took me back all the way back to the trail. Who remembers that episode? In the hallway, the two of them just standing there for 1 minute. And in this episode, yeah, they had a couple of seconds where they just stood there looking at each other. And I swear, it's almost like you can just feel the heat just radiating off of the two of them. I mean, they are just like so into each other. She eventually like takes a step back, like, let me step back from this because I am not ready for this, and tells him what to do. And we all know that he's going to do it. Whatever Olivia says, Fitz is going to do. And so he eventually does go to apologize, and Susan Ross gets confirmed. It was a good episode. I feel like we got a few developments and like, of course, a few twists with the whole B613 thing, but it also felt like they were just setting us up for what's coming. Like, I definitely feel like this B613 thing is getting ready to explode, which makes me feel like we're going to be seeing more of Papa Pope very, very soon. Okay, guys, that is it for me this week. Don't forget to tell me what you thought about tonight's episode down in the comment section below, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.